6 years since I started working full-time, spring has arrived again. I find myself facing another major decision in my life. At Amtrak station one weekend, bustling more than usual as spring break had just started. Pushing through the crowd, I stood in a line at the ticket kiosk. My company's new CEO was having a wedding in the Big Apple, and I was taking a Cellar Express to attend. I had some time until the departure, so I sat down on a bench, checking my work phone with a cup of coffee in hand. Work had been going smoothly for a while. I grew up in an ordinary household and joined the workforce after graduating from a prestigious private university on scholarship. I worked in the sales department of a well-known company. My boss expected a lot from me because I had been excelling with my upbeat personality in sealing deals. I was the only non-executive employee invited to the wedding, apparently as a move to anticipate my future career growth. It had been a month since the change in CEO. The new CEO was the son of the former, having worked in another company for a few years. Despite being considered too young to inherit the business from his father, the executives, fearing repercussions on their positions, remained silent about the transition. He might have been young, but he was going to lead the company. The wedding was a chance to personally greet him. I aimed to behave in a way that would contribute positively to my standing in the workplace. With a fiancé awaiting our upcoming marriage, I was determined to seize this opportunity for career advancement and put more pressure than usual on myself. Oh no. As I was lifting my head to check the timetable, a girl came into my field of vision. I remember seeing her near the ticket kiosk earlier. She was earnestly talking to a station staff member, but eventually walked towards me with a look of despair on her face. She sat next to me, burying her head in her hands, and started crying. The sound of her sobbing reached my ears. Although she was a complete stranger, I couldn't help but be concerned when someone next to me was in distress. From what I could tell, she had an air of innocence, perhaps a high school student. I offered her my handkerchief and quietly asked, "Is there something bothering you?" She seemed a bit surprised but took the handkerchief, giving a slight nod. After wiping away her tears, she took a deep breath and turned her face towards me.
Thank you for your kindness.
Having dried her tears, she composed herself and looked at me again. A vulnerable girl was suddenly transformed into a poised young woman. I gently inquired about the reason for her tears.
Did something bad happen? If there's anything I can do to help, feel free to tell me.
She began to slowly tell me what happened. Harper was a high school student attending a well-known private school in Boston. She had been living away from her family and received news this morning that her father had been in an accident and was taken to the hospital. In a panic, she mistakenly booked a ticket to the wrong destination. She realized it upon arriving at the station and attempted to buy a new ticket, but it was fully booked.
If something were to happen to my mom...
Looking at her trembling as she spoke, I couldn't help but feel a bit overwhelmed. Not being able to be there for her mom in her critical condition would be the biggest regret in life. I understood that all too well. Back when I was in 4th grade, my mom, who was often sick, passed away. It happened when I was away on an overnight school trip, and I received the news of her critical condition when we arrived at the destination. Accompanied by the teacher, I rushed to the hospital, but by the time I got there, she had already passed away. Saying goodbye to her, who had been smiling softly until the day before, was tough. I had been hoping for her to beat the illness and come back home to be with me. I couldn't stop wailing, hanging onto her cold body. Since then, raised by my father and grandmother, I generally wanted to do something for that girl in a similar situation. I didn't want her to go through the same, so I handed her my ticket. Smiling at her troubled expression, I patted her shoulder.
I'll figure it out. Don't worry about it, just go.
As soon as I finished talking, there was an announcement for the arriving train. I gave her a push. She clung to my arm, asking for my contact, so I handed her my business card from my chest pocket and watched her walk away. She expressed her gratitude multiple times. Even though she was still young, I thought she had a polite manner. Truly a refined young lady attending a prestigious school. After the train left, I let out a deep sigh.
Shoot.
Despite trying to act cool, giving her the ticket messed up my plans. As she said, there were no available seats on the next train. I walked out of the station to the nearest car rental office and drove directly to the destination. A week later, the CEO is back in the office and I am summoned by him.
I am sincerely sorry for what happened.
I apologize at once, but he lets out a somewhat irritated sigh. That day, I got stuck in traffic a few times while driving a rented car, significantly overshooting the expected arrival time. By the time I finally reached the venue, the ceremony was already over, and the reception was halfway through. My major tardiness caused a commotion among the attendees, and I received a disdainful look from the other executives. Even if I made excuses, it wouldn't have changed anything. All I could do was apologize and keep my head down.
I'm truly disappointed in you. I invited you with expectations for the future, and you showed up majorly late.
As Mr. Dalton mutters, I remained silent. A regular employee whom he had expected better from had messed up on his big day. It's understandable to be upset.
Let me give you a choice.
After a brief period of silence, he clears his throat and says, "Doing nothing about this would be a disgrace to me." Above all, my anger won't cease. Leaning over the desk with clasped hands, he flashes a smug grin. I get a bad feeling.
Resign or get transferred to a small branch. It's up to you.
I feel my blood run cold looking at his smirk. I never thought that being late to a wedding would lead to losing my job.
Please,
Either choice seems hopeless. If I go to a small branch, it's basically a demotion. Being out of the frontline sales, my paycheck will take a nosedive. On top of that, chances of promotion are slim. I'd be stuck with the same pay, just playing the company's game. But I can't just quit. I can't leave the company without any prospects, and I can't face my fiancé if I do that. We might need to postpone our wedding. In the worst-case scenario, she might even break up with me.
Getting rid of an unimpressive low-rank employee like you is a piece of cake. If I'm seen as someone who can't control my employees, it's your fault.
Mr. Dalton, aware of the damage it would do to me, waits for my response with laughs. I can't say anything but just clench my fists. It seems like he wants to get rid of me from his line of sight.
What's the holdup? Make a decision already. Once you decide, you can leave. There's no more work for you here.
The cruel words are piercing through. Faced with a sudden ultimatum, it isn't easy to decide. If I've fallen out of favor to this extent, maybe it's best to gracefully leave the company. As I briefly ponder this, the office door swings open forcefully.
Could you wait a moment for that discussion?
Appearing before us is Mike's wife, Mrs. Dalton. She's out of breath and looks alarmed. Both Mr. Dalton and I are taken aback by her sudden entrance, rendering us speechless. She swiftly walks towards her husband, followed by a young girl. It's Harper, the girl I gave the ticket to at the station that day. She glances at me, smiling.
Why didn't you tell him the reason for being late to the wedding?
Mrs. Dalton questions me. I force a smile off my face to answer her.
even if I did, it would just be an excuse. The fact that I was late won't change.
She shakes her head in disagreement. I wonder why Harper's here. Although I don't know the reason, I feel a slight sense of relief. Being here probably means your mom's okay now. Thinking it hasn't turned out to be the worst-case scenario, I return his smile. If she's smiling like this, then I have no regrets. I wonder if the ticket I gave her has helped soothe her.
You gave her the train ticket, right?
When I quickly nod, she takes my hand in hers.
I can't thank you enough.
I'm puzzled by the sudden turn of events. Mr. Dalton, witnessing this scene, also stares in disbelief, probably confused by his wife expressing her gratitude to an employee he has just treated dismissively. After a moment of awkward silence, she releases my hand and starts speaking.
This is Harper Queen, the daughter of the internationally renowned designer, Karina.
I gasp in surprise at her true identity. Mr. Dalton remains silent, frozen like a statue. Harper just keeps smiling as Ms. Dalton introduces her. Karina Queen is one of the top designers known worldwide. She is praised for her unconventional work that emphasizes femininity. The mention of such a big name leaves me feeling unreal.
Karina contacted me after the wedding. She explained the reason for her absence and how kind one of her employees had been to Harper.
Mrs. Dalton had gone to the same university as Karina. They became good friends, sharing the same classes, and deepened their friendship over time. Now both families are close. It turns out I unintentionally helped them in their significant event. Harper happily walks towards me, expressing her gratitude.
Thanks to you, I was by my mom's side when she woke up. Although she regrets not seeing Vanessa in her wedding dress, she's tremendously grateful to you.
The dress Mrs. Dalton wore at the wedding was a one-of-a-kind, unique creation designed by Karina. When Mrs. Dalton, who had such a deep friendship with Karina, learned about my involvement, she rushed over to intervene.
He's someone full of goodwill, helping others without caring much about himself. Take down the choices you gave him earlier.
She hands a clear file with a paper inside to Mr. Dolan. After reading it, he stares at me, his hands shaking. The paper contains a handwritten note from Karina herself, expressing her gratitude and stating that she wants to contract a large quantity of her company's products for her next exhibition. If the contract goes through, it'll be significant PR for the company and a substantial profit. Mike nods silently and he ceases to mention my demotion or resignation.
Please make a decision after knowing the background. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have gotten this opportunity.
Scolded by his wife, he frowns a little grimly. A year later, I am promoted due to the success of Karina's contract and now work diligently in a manageable position. Moreover, I've gotten married to my fiancé. My career growth in this company is thanks to Harper. She graduated high school and now attends a design school where her mom and Mrs. Dalton are alumni. She's planning to work alongside her mom in the future. I was able to save her by chance, drawing from my past experiences. I never expected that the incident would be a lifeline for me. The teary girl I met that day now occasionally comes to see me wearing a big smile. Having safeguarded her smile is my greatest pride. The hand I extended has become a helping hand for someone else. I stay true to my values while extending a helping hand.